He did not like that. Mm-mm.
I saw an ad that says Rhonda sales tax, which is a little more, but anyway, we have much more integrity than name calling, Marie.
Let's hope so.
But it's going to be a crowded field. You got Tim Scott's, he has declared, so is Nikki Haley. Chris Christie's going to jump in. Mike Pence is going to jump in.
Yep.
And Fox News is actually set to host the first Republican debate in August. But after that, it's going to be a battle amongst the networks to see who'll carry the rest of them. And there are reports that Donald Trump might not even participate because his campaign believes that his opponents have more to gain than he does. As a front runner, he can only lose ground. And Ron DeSantis, he may actually sit it out because he believes corporate media shouldn't be involved in this process. He said that to Glenn Beck. So here to help us sort it all out, one of our favorites, David Dulio, professor of political science and director of the Center for Civic Engagement at my alma mater of Oakland University. Thanks for joining us after Quitting time on a Friday, David.
Oh, you got it. Thanks for having me.
So does Donald Trump have a twisted, albeit salient point here that maybe participating in a debate could only hurt a front runner?
He most certainly does, and this is a tactic and strategy, or I should say strategy, that we often see with front runners in political campaigns, where they say, "Hey, look, I'm in a position of power. I have the upper hand. I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt me or give my opponents the opportunity to knock me off my pedestal." And I think we can even apply that to the governor's race last year when Gretchen Whitmer was not terribly interested until late in the campaign of debating Tudor Dixon.
We're so glad you could join us, David. We always love your insight into all this. When we talk about debating, though, how many people really look at those debates? And we're not talking about Mike and I and the staff here at WJR because we hang on every word. But the average voter, how much sway does a debate really have for the average voter? Do you think it still does?
I think it's important, not necessarily for the viewing of, say, the hour-long or 90-minute debate that the three of us political junkies might watch all the time, right? Or watch the whole thing. I think that's one aspect of it. But the other is the coverage of that debate after the fact, right? The clips and the analysis and anything else that might come out of that if a candidate were to make a gaffe or embarrass themselves. That's what would move or potentially get the attention of many more people than simply the viewing audience.
Yeah, we all remember I knew John F. Kennedy, and you are no John F. Kennedy, right?
There's that, and maybe even more analogous is in 2011. You may remember Oakland University hosted a Republican presidential debate.
I was there. Yeah,
and Rick Perry's "oops" moment, right? That will live in presidential history forever, and it totally ruined his campaign.
It will, and you know what? After that, in the pit when the candidates would come out and you could ask them questions, you could do a scrum. He just laughed it off. He goes, I don't know what to say about that, but it just happened. What can I say?
877-44-MITCH, 877-44-MITCH if you want to weigh in here. Do you still take a lot of stock in debates, or do you already have your mind made up? And do you think if Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis skip the debate, if they would help or hurt them? 877-44-MITCH. That's 877-44-MITCH. And David, the Republican National Committee, they're walking a tightrope right now. They're negotiating with CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, etc. on who will actually cover the remaining debates. But if the two top contenders bow out, could they possibly cancel the debate? And if so, how would that be damaging to both the Republican National Committee and the networks?
I don't think they would cancel it because they've got. I think if they did that, it would show favoritism to Trump or DeSantis, right? It could be perceived as, well, if those two aren't here, then it's not worth it. Well, what does that say about the rest of them? I mean, that might be practically the the sort of reality of it, but I don't think they would take that step. I think even a bigger problem than the networks could be the rules that the RNC just released today that say that in order to qualify to participate in an RNC-sanctioned debate, candidates can't do anything outside of the party apparatus, and two, they have to sign a pledge agreeing to support the eventual nominee. And I think that's going to be a sticking point for Trump. He's been asked that already, and he has brushed aside those calls for him to pledge support to someone not himself that might win that nomination.
Yeah, I'm voting for the fact he would not support anybody else. But let me ask you this: in the debates from the last time that Trump ran, I mean, he literally sucked the air out of the room during the debates with everyone else. Either was it name calling or whatever. He always sucked the air out of the room. With him not there, do you think that would, do you think he would not do that again? Do you think that could happen again? Or do you think that Chris Christie might come from behind and just really stand up to him and say, look, this is not how this is going to go this time?
I don't think anybody can stop Trump from being Trump. I think he's going to do what he thinks is in his best interest, and that is pushing back on the moderators if they're members of the mainstream media. It's going after his opponents in really the only way that Donald Trump can, whether it's with clever nicknames or attacks on their record, right? So I think if Trump is on that debate stage, he's gonna be Trump.
He's going to come out punching. Hey, let's veer just a little bit off of topic here for 1 second off the topic of the debate. Can you just assess for us this situation where Joe Biden fell during the Air Force commencement ceremony? It was difficult to watch. I mean, he ended up on his hands and knees. It was very difficult to watch. There's a lot of questions about this. I don't know. Is that damaging? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it was certainly difficult to watch, and I think everybody's happy that he's okay. But politically, I think this just feeds the narrative that his health and his age are an issue, and that's that's not just me saying that. There, poll after poll after poll shows that the American public is concerned about it, and that they think that he's his elevated number of years is maybe an issue that people should think about. So I think that it's just going to remind folks of other stumbles, whether it's up the stairs on Air Force One or some other incident that we've seen in the past.
So, David, after much political posturing, the House and Senate, surprise, surprise, did end up passing the debt ceiling bill by a pretty wide margin after reports that the sky may have been falling. In the fall, if you had to summarize this whole debt ceiling fiasco to your students, what would you say to them?
2 words. It would be typical Washington. And it's just because, as you mentioned, right, all of the machinations and the bobbing and weaving of the different players and actors in that whole sordid tale, we ended up exactly where I think any calm head would have predicted we would end up. Maybe the biggest surprise of the whole thing was the fact that so many members of the House of Representatives voted for it. That was an enormous bipartisan margin. That, I think, is really the thing to take note of.
David Duilio, professor of political science and director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. Thanks for your insights. Always very enlightening.
Thanks, David.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.